Nick had always been a neutral character through the book. Before the discussion, I thought it was for no particular purpose, but after discussing it, I realized that the author had done it on purpose for the reasons we discussed in the discussion.
All right. Next question. Why do you think the author made Nick such a neutral character, even though he's like the main? Like he didn't really have a side necessarily.
I mean, he kind of ends up serving as the narrator, so
Yeah, he did.
he's supposed to be kind of impartial, even though he definitely has a hand in what goes on.
Yeah, it definitely does. I feel the author wanted to have us to see the both sides of the story, and so like the only way to do that, like, well, you could what he did. Like I forgot what book it was. One of the Rick Riordan books where you just switch back and forth between characters. I don't necessarily like that style. So what he just had a neutral character who was unbiased, and that way you wouldn't have to switch back and forth, but you could still get the effects and the emotions of both sides of any argument. Anything else you feel?
Not particularly. I really just think he was there to serve as an impartial go-between.
The book starts off with a little piece about how Nick restrains all judgments. I didn't see why the author had included this until my discussion where I saw how it came into play.
Alright, in the very beginning, when the author gave a little intro about how Nick like restrained judgments and how his father had made that, it didn't really seem to come into play. Do you think it did anywhere? Or rather,
I would say it did. The way he treats Gatsby and reacts to Gatsby, he's supposed to be impartial. He doesn't pass judgment right away.
That's true, because Gatsby had like a lot of emotion, a lot of weird stuff going on with his romantic life, and Nick did.
Yep. Yep.
I think like by being so restraining from talking about people, people feel like they can confide in him because he's not going to judge them, and thereby, when they confide in him, they're confiding in us because we're seeing through Nick's point of view. And that way, we can get an understanding of what's going on, but so it allows us to see the controversy because we can see both sides. Cause everyone confides in Nick.
In the book, Tom has an extramarital affair, and before my discussion, I was confused as to if Daisy had known about her husband's mistress. However, after this part of the discussion, I was convinced that she knew.
So speaking of Tom's affair, do you think Daisy knew of Tom's affair from the start?
Yeah.
She did?
Oh, yeah.
What? Like,
Um,
how would you conclude that?
well, I mean, when she talks about kind of like the potential of like her child and how she doesn't want them to grow up in this kind of a lifestyle, so just some of the things that she says, it's very clear that she, in my opinion, knew what was going on.
Also,
with
towards the
Tom.
end, when the whole group had congregated at Daisy's house before they went to town, when I can't talk right now. When Tom had gone, okay, when Tom had gone out of the room to do something, and then Nick, Jordan's like, that must be Tom's mistress, and Daisy doesn't even react, kind of indicating she already knew.
The reason why I was confused as to if Daisy had known about the affair was because she didn't do anything about it. In this part of the discussion, I saw why she hadn't and realized how different the expectations and life was for women in the 1920s.
So why don't you think she did anything if she knew?
What was she gonna do?
Confront him?
What would that have done? I mean, he's kind of described as this, manly man. He was head of his household, and she was
filed for divorce.
I mean, for a woman at that time, getting a divorce and, being uneducated, what would she have done? So her entire lifestyle basically depended on her rich husband, and divorcing him or confronting him would have put all of that at risk.
Like, do you think it was like socially acceptable for him to do something like that? Or was it still, like, wrong?
To get a divorce, or
No,
just
to have a mistress like Tom did.
no? That's, I mean, throughout history, it's been pretty
Yeah.
accepted for a man to have extramarital affairs, but definitely not for a woman. And I mean, divorce would have put a stain on both.
But you think it was appropriate, or sorry, not appropriate, but socially acceptable for Tom to do that?
Maybe not to like boast about it, but it wasn't something that people would have necessarily,
Yeah, so you do think it was socially acceptable.
Hmm?
You do think it was, like, socially acceptable. Just that.
Based on historical fact, yeah.
Yeah, I guess. Alright.
Gatsby had changed dramatically throughout the book. Before, I thought it wasn't too bad, but after this portion of the discussion, I saw that it was mostly a downhill change.
How did your opinion of Gatsby change throughout the book?
I mean, he starts out as this mysterious kind of a figure who Nick very much so looks up to, and
Yeah.
it kind of falls from there.
You think so?
Just like Nick's opinion, because he kind of, Nick starts to get a little bit disillusioned with him, and he is just, it kind of, that's the culmination point for Nick, where he's done with this Eastern lifestyle, and he ends up moving
Yeah.
back to the Midwest.
He does. I don't know, I feel like at first Gatsby seemed kind of like calm and collected and just like overall chill, and then he almost seemed like the character that like goes evil halfway through the book, because it's like, oh, you're super nice, you're my friend, and then turns out I'm evil. I don't know. Like the super like, chill, oh, I'm on your side, but halfway through I turn evil kind of person. He didn't, but I feel like as the book got older, he came like more pushy, I guess. Like he put Tom and Daisy in kind of awkward positions in the hotel. He exposed Daisy's secrets in front of everyone, and she just didn't seem kind of comfortable there. It was kind of I don't know, pushy is kind of for lack of better words, but
I think that's also kind of how real relationships work. You know, you meet somebody and you don't necessarily know everything about them.
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe the more you go on, the less you.
That's true.
The less you really.
That's true. The less you like him.
Yeah.
So how was the
The ending of the book was very unique in that it wasn't really sad or happy, just complete. Before the discussion, I didn't know why the author had done it like this, but after this portion, I saw that it was because that's how life is, and the book was meant to be down to earth and lifelike.
in the end of the book, like, why do you think the author didn't put it like in everyone lives happily ever after way? It was almost sad, but it wasn't. It was just complete.
Well, that's life, isn't it? So, I mean, it's supposed to be a realistic portrayal of, the American dream and how the Roaring Twenties maybe weren't so roaring.
Yeah.
It's just,
It was down to earth. This is how
nothing
life
in life ever works out perfectly, and sometimes that's just how it is.
Yeah, and like it wasn't a happy-go-lucky, and I thought that was like because the theme, which was all about the decline of the American dream, that's not a happy-go-lucky theme, and the ending seemed really fitting to like the American dream isn't here anymore. Live life normally. Don't expect it to be easy. And I thought it was an amazing ending, just because like it wasn't sad, but I mean, it wasn't happy. It wasn't sad. It was just complete. Just I don't know.